Okay, so greetings to everybody. As we were discussing briefly last time, having just started the chapter on taking refuge, the chapter 3, and the last time we discussed that once you possess or once you have that Buddha lineage, then the proper process of engaging into the path is first taking refuge. In Buddhism, we talk about entering 3 doors. One, when you take refuge, you enter the door to become a Buddhist. When you cultivate bodhicitta, you enter the door to become a Mahayanist. And when you take initiation, you enter the door to undertake tantric practice. So these are the 3 doors that you must enter if you want to get qualified in these 3 levels of practices. Now, with regard to the process of taking refuge, it is a quite extensive and complex subject. But what is important to know, at least in the beginning stage, as I briefly mentioned earlier, is that taking refuge is not a unique Buddhist practice. We human beings, even I think animals, they have this tendency to take refuge in something when they are frightened, when their life is threatened. Either you'll take refuge in a cave, or when you're hungry, you take refuge in your lunch or dinner. When it's raining or it's very hot, you take refuge in umbrella. So that's why in ancient times there are also people who had prayed to a tree or a mountain. So taking that mountain, the tree is believed to be a place of some powerful spirit or God or something. And then they take refuge in the sun, take refuge in the moon. Now, of course, as and when our knowledge becomes wider, then this kind of taking refuge in the ultimate sense to external forces is gradually, I think, dwindling. But still, there are so many people who take refuge in different things. And then there are others who take refuge, maybe not in sun and moon and forest, but they take refuge in other worldly spirits that we have in the Tibetan society. Also, there are people who take refuge in certain malevolent forces, which His Holiness has advised not to take refuge in it, because one unique thing that you should understand in Buddhism is, apart from taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, you don't take refuge. I mean, you don't take anyone else as the ultimate refuge. Temporarily, yes, temporarily you can take refuge in your food or friend and things like that. But in terms of your ultimate refuge, there are only 3. Now, ultimate refuge means that if you are a Buddhist and if your aim is to achieve liberation or Buddhahood, then in that process of practice and path, in that process of purification of your mind, the only object that can really help you is the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So, roughly speaking, Buddha refers to the completely enlightened one. Of course, in the scriptures, you can study about the 5 forms of the Buddha, 3 forms of Buddha, 4 forms of Buddha, 4 kayas or 3 kayas, 5 kayas, and things like that. But they all basically can be included in the 2, which is called Dharmakaya and Rupakaya, the form body and the truth body. So the form body refers to the almost like the emanation body of the Buddha, which has a physical form, which you can see. Not everybody, but more purified, people with more purified mind can see that. Then there is the truth body, which refers to, which is also called as Dharmakaya, which refers to the emptiness nature of the mind. So from that, you will see that the object in which one takes refuge is basically, 2. One is called causal refuge, another is called resultant refuge. Causal refuge means like an external Buddha who gives the teaching and which helps you get liberated or achieve enlightenment. And the resultant refuge refers to, the practices that you do, and as a result of your practices and as a result of your purification, finally you yourself will become a Buddha. So that is the resultant refuge. So at the end of the day, unless you become the Buddha, Nobody can really help you in the true sense of the term. Little bit help, yes, there, but even if you get liberated, if you have not achieved complete enlightenment, if you are not Buddha, still you are not perfect. Okay, so that state of achievement where you have achieved just nirvana or liberation for yourself and not complete enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, that is called solitary liberation, solitary, nirvana, which means nirvana or liberation just for yourself. So there are people who do, aspire to achieve such a thing, because it's easy to say that may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, but when it comes to practice, it is so difficult. There are so many people who they don't like you, or even those who you try to help, but still they will repay you in a negative way. So it's not easy to help all sentient beings. So because of that, people might discourage, thinking that even there is a story of Avalokiteshvara trying to help and delivered many suffering sentient beings. Next day he goes and finds the same amount of people, he liberates them. Next day again goes, he finds the same amount of people. So there is almost like endless sentient beings. And it's very difficult, you see, because our mind is completely, ordinary mind is completely infused with negative emotions. It's ready to flare out, as we are seeing right in this conflict that we are seeing around. It's basically all kind of motivated by negative emotions, not based on enlightenment. It is really like victory for oneself, defeat for others, or for one's ego, name, things like that. So that's human nature, not just 1 or 2%, but it's the difference is only whether you have the power or not and things like that. But basically we all have this negative tendency. And when it comes, that's why in the text it said when it comes to doing something negative, it's really like a big boulder thrown down the steep slope of a mountain. You don't need any effort. It just goes down one after another. You're inventive, you are clever. I mean, look at the military uniforms, they are so smart, with the stars and have you seen a group of peace lovers who come with such smart dresses? No. Yeah. And uh, yeah, then also in the country also there is a uh, department for security or army and things like, but I don't think there is any department for peace and things like that in the government offices also. So all these things says a volume, says volumes. So this is our human tendency. And that's why Shantideva said, even though we want happiness, but because of ignorance, we destroy our own happiness as if it is our enemy. What we want is victory. What we want is peace. What we want is happiness. But because we go in the wrong way, thinking that everything will be in our way, in our thing, then it turns out, wrongly, because you did the wrong thing, right? So unfortunately, that is why there is every reason to cultivate more and more love and compassion to all people, the wrong doer and those who have been victim or whoever, because both are, one is actually suffering right now, another is creating suffering, which is also creating more problem for oneself and for many lives to come. So we are when we engage in this negative activities, influenced by negative emotions, we are really stuck in, difficult to get out quagmire. It's like that, unfortunately. So what we need is really, enlightenment, care and concern, and pray, and everything for everywhere without any discrimination. And unfortunately, we have this tendency to take sides towards each other. We never see who is right, who is wrong, but we take sides and then say, when it is your side, then you think whatever you are doing is right. When it's other side, then we think whatever they are doing is wrong. That's the problem. Even within country, we have such mental tendency. So it's not easy. It's not easy, but not easy doesn't mean you cannot do it. Not easy doesn't mean you should not do it. This is such an important thing. If we take just a little bit of common sense, we are on this earth for maximum 100 years, out of which most of us have spent our almost like 50% of our life already. Now maybe for many of us it's just 20% or 30% remaining life. So enjoy their life, be happy, live harmoniously with others. Now, not ordinary people might say, yes, individually I want to do that, but the government is not letting us do that. The world is not letting us do that. We are surrounded by negative people, bad people, disturbing people, things like that. That's what we think. But in terms of your practice, whatever is happening, whatever is the situation, it's important to remain calm and happy, and wherever possible, help others, encourage them, not to just see the dark side all the time. It's important, you see. Dharma practice is needed at time of difficulty. Just like medicine is needed when we are sick. When we are healthy, we don't need medicine. We need medicine when we are sick. So similarly, dharma practice is needed when there is problem, when there's conflict, when there's difficulty, right? So wherever there is an occasion, I think we should try to, talk about good things for harmony, for peace, long-term peace, and things like that. Okay, it might make some difference, at least for some people. Maybe not to a whole country or whole nation, but that's the way. So therefore, the main point is here, when we take refuge because we have a difficulty. So now in this case, when we say I take refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, we are again saying I have a difficulty. So what is difficulty now? So that's very crucial to think. Now here the difficulty is, the reason we take refuge to Buddha Dharma is not because we are shortage of money, not because we want to become popular and famous, not any other, worldly or temporary reason. But the reason to take refuge to Buddha Dharma and Sangha is that not only me, but all sentient beings are having big problem, especially because of negative emotions. And the ones that can really show this path are the three objects of refuge, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. As I've explained earlier, they are compared to, a physician, medicine, and a nurse or helper, right? When we are physically extremely sick and not able to take care of oneself, then it is important to find a skilled physician, get the good medicine, and then somebody to help you. So similarly, we are, honestly speaking, ordinarily speaking, you may say I'm healthy, but in terms of your mental state, there are many examples right now. So physically, there are people who look very healthy, like people who go to kill others. They are physically very fit, but mentally, unfortunately, full of destructive thinking, right? So therefore, you are sick in that sense, right? So therefore, in order to remove that sickness, it is important to take refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, at least from the Buddhist viewpoint. But this does not mean to say everybody has to take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Everybody has to become a Buddhist. We are not saying that. What we are saying is whether you become a Buddhist or not, that is your choice. But what is important is we must reduce our negative emotions, anger, jealousy, hatred. And I have said the other day that whether this makes sense or not is something that you need to scrutinize, something that you need to analyze. You should personally see whether anger is good for your health or not, whether anger is good for your for harmony of your family members or not. So like that, just like a scientist, just like a researcher, see how good these negative emotions are, right? So that is what we should do. Then for each of these, the definition of each of these, who is Buddha, who is Dharma, who is Sangha, there, I have briefly explained it. Buddha refers to one who is completely enlightened. Dharma here primarily refers to the path that leads to achievement of liberation, and the cessation, the liberation itself. These two, the path and the state of cessation of negative emotions. These two are said to be the Dharma, which is the real protector. And then Sangha primarily refers to spiritual practitioners who have achieved the path of seeing, the Aryas, okay, not ordinary monks we call Sangha, but here in this case, when we talk about the Sangha, in the case of the three objects refuge, then the Sangha refers to those who have already achieved the path of seeing, okay. So for the time being, I think that this should be enough. Otherwise, it will take long time to finish this text. Hopefully, one day we'll finish this text. So I'm not going to read much. Otherwise, for all this, different types of the forms of the Buddha, different types of Dharma, different types of Sangha. There are lot to study, lot to learn. Okay. And then as one, the important thing is, what are the precepts of taking refuge? The precepts of taking refuge. That means, having taken refuge, you need to do something. Now, this is, I think, for me, very crucial, because most of us either don't know Dharma, but the majority of the people who know a little bit Dharma, but they don't practice. That's the problem. Unless you eat food, it will not alleviate your hunger. If you just read the menu and go away. So it's like that, just reading the text and getting a little bit of idea is not enough. You need to personally practice. So what are the precepts of, taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha? So having taken refuge to the Buddha, in all times you should entrust or trust to the Buddha and make offerings to the Buddha. Okay, Buddha or the three objects of refuge. Now trust, how would you trust? Unless you have a thorough understanding of why one should take refuge to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, unless you have that, it's very difficult to develop that trust. And it is because of having no trust, we are not protected. If you wholeheartedly take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, it is said that many of your fears and worries will go away. There is a story of a person who was traveling somewhere, and it became dark, and so he just sat down under a bridge, and then gradually he realized that under that bridge that there were so many like evil spirits. He could hear, they are coming, and the poor man, there was nothing he could do, but he simply repeated these formulas of taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. He had not much idea, forget about who they are, but he had heard it from somewhere, so he repeated it. And just because of this evil spirits, none of them could harm that person. There are things like that, right? For example, in our today's life, I have personally met a number of people who have a lot of fear. And the interesting thing is that, as is said in one of the Buddhist teachings, to those areas where we should fear, we have no fear. We are very brave. For example, in killing other people, we should really have fear, hesitation. In harming other people, we should really fear, right? In developing negative emotions, we should have fear. But in those areas, we have no fear. But in other stupid things, what will happen to me tomorrow? What will happen to me after 5 years? You start thinking about this, then develop anxiety, fear, unnecessary fear. Right? So many of these unnecessary fears, which is there, especially in today's world, can be avoided, can be eliminated, in fact, by understanding the truth, by taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Right? Taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha means basically taking refuge in all the good things that we have within us. The capacity to become Buddha, that is there within us. Right? The capacity to develop all this, all this Dharma, the path and the various levels of the path and the true cessation within us. The capacity to become a Sangha is there within us. So when we have all this potential means capacity to protect yourself, capacity to readjust yourself in accordance with the changing situations. So once you know all these things, then many of these fears will go away. But unfortunately, our way of thinking is such that, certain fears, unnecessary fears haunt your mind, and you almost see these fears as something constant and permanent. They keep on coming. And it's not like that. Everything is changing, right? Everything is changing. So many of these fears, worries, anxieties will go away if you genuinely take refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And if you genuinely take refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, you can genuinely take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha only if you have clearly seen the importance of nirvana, right? Genuinely taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha means having genuine aspiration to achieve liberation from samsara and to achieve nirvana. Now, in order to do that, you should be able to clearly see the many sufferings, unsatisfactory states in the samsara, and the great many qualities of nirvana and enlightenment. So there is a lot to reflect and study. So therefore, there's need to think, meditate, contemplate regularly, as I said the other day, just as we have to eat 3-4 times a day regularly, non-stop. Likewise, we need to feed this mind with these practices regularly. Then there will be change. Otherwise, there will be not much. What we do is maybe, of course, better than nothing, but there will be not much transformation. Okay, so there's therefore I was saying that the precept of having taken refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is that in all times means all times, in terms of peace, in terms of war, in terms of happiness, in terms of suffering, you should remember. Again, here, unfortunately, when we are happy, then we think I can do everything by myself. I don't have to take refuge to my parents. I don't have to take refuge to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. You forget all of them. And then when you are in trouble, then you try to, remember them. Then sometimes it's too late, It's not that they will not help, but because you are almost like opportunist. So, so the effect will not be much, you see. So we are like that, you see. It's important to remember these good qualities, to remember Buddha, Dharma, Sangha in all times, and trust them. And whether they are really reliable objects of refuge or not, you should study. That's why process of taking refuge, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is not blindly, but through study and reflection. Okay, that's very, very important. And as an indication of your wholeheartedly taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, don't wholeheartedly take refuge in malevolent forces, spirits of the water, of trees, of stones. Of course, not wholeheartedly take refuge to money. Many of us wholeheartedly take refuge in money in our nice building, you see. Everything. No idea how all these things will change and how when you are going to lose everything. It is indefinite, as you are seeing right now in this conflict, you see. Very uncertain. Nobody have expected such a drastic, unfortunate thing happening, you see. It happens. So at that time, where are you going to take refuge? If you have that mental strength, calmness, peace, skillful means, then still you will be able to do well. Okay. So, and having taken refuge to sublime Dharma, you should not wholeheartedly trust people or friends who are against such practices. So that is not making a discrimination, but of course you should have compassion towards all sentient beings. But because your focus is to associate with proper Sangha, the reason that you should always associate and trust the Sangha, the sublime Sangha, is so that you are not taken into the wrong direction by associating with wrong people. We are ordinary people. We can easily be duped. We can easily be led into different direction with the lure of money, with the lure of prestige, things like that. We are very easily can be led into the wrong direction. Therefore, you should not take others as your Sangha who are against such practices. Okay? And then, especially by taking refuge to Dharma, we should refrain from harming others. That's very, very crucial. Because the foundation of Dharma, the Buddhist Dharma, is compassion. So with that foundation, how can you harm others? So compassion is the key towards all sentient beings, the wrongdoers, okay, and also people who are being wronged. So you can read this in some of the sutras. There's a extensive explanation. Now, what are the benefits of such process of taking refuge? By taking refuge, ultimately, of course, you will get completely enlightened. Now, here also we need to think, is it possible to get enlightened? Is it possible to become omniscient or completely enlightened? So the comforting or good news is that based on our own experience, we know that through study, you can improve. You can become better and better. There's the indication that you can, take steps, right? And come closer to that completely enlightened state. Even if you don't become completely enlightened, right? But you know that you can change, you can get transformed, you can reduce negative emotions, you can become happier, you can bring happiness in the mind of many people. That is 100% sure. That is something that which we all can see, right? So that's why in many of the Buddhist teachings, they say it's not so important how quickly you're going to get enlightened. Because even when you get completely enlightened, your job is to help other sentient beings. So that you can start right now. Of course, your way of helping other sentient beings maybe not as effective as the completely enlightened beings, but you can at least help many people right now. And that is the path that leads to that state of Buddhahood, which when achieved can benefit all sentient beings. Right? I mean, just as when we see people are mistreated, like people are bombarded, things like that, we feel very sorry, even if we are not their relatives and things like that, even if we are seeing that only on the screen, but we feel very unhappy, very, very sad. His Holiness the Dalai Lama also, appealed that this conflict should stop. And he said that he feel very sad. You see, many are unnecessarily killed and things like that, right? So therefore, it is important to uh, practice compassion, having taken refuge to Dharma. Okay. So the ultimately ultimate benefit is you will achieve Buddhahood, and temporarily also your negative obscuration, your karmic obscuration can be lessened. Then actually, I think you should do some experiment. For example, at least for, let us say, 5 days. At least for 4 or 5 days, you take very good care of your health, take good rest, and cultivate good thoughts, and as much as possible help others, speak nicely to people for 5 days. Do those practices, and then see how do you feel. Contrarily, next 4 or 5 days, you develop all the negative emotions like anger, jealousy, competition, and whoever you meet say all the nasty, harsh words, and also don't take good care of your health. You take smoking and alcohol and don't sleep properly, and see you can see immediately, you will see. You see, so we don't have to talk big, just unfortunately we don't pay much attention to these things. If we pay a little bit attention, we can see the difference with these two different kind of lifestyles. Okay. So that's why by taking refuge to Buddha Dharma and Sangha, your negative karma will become lessened. Taking refuge to Buddha Dharma Sangha basically means you have started doing all the good things. When you have started doing all the good things, the negative actions will, of course, get minimized. Right? We are talking about two things. like air conditioning, developing good things or developing bad things, with the air condition, when it's too hot, you reduce the volume of the heat temperature and increase the cold temperature. So like that, when you see these negative emotions are destructive, you need to reduce it. You need to keep, watch and reduce them, minimize them, and increase the positive emotions. That is the process. And when you now see at this one, this you need a little bit thinking, Then it says, by taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, you will become invincible to the harms of human beings and non-human beings, meaning that they cannot harm you. Okay, now how does this function? This functions, I think, in two ways. One, the objects to whom you take refuge, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, they have the capacity to protect you, number one, when you wholeheartedly take refuge in them. Okay. Now, it does not mean that those who do not wholeheartedly take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha are not taken care of. But it's like the hook and the ring, The hook of, the hook of compassion of the Buddhas are there all the time. But the ring, that is your mental preparedness, is not there. How can that hook of compassion can get into that ring, right? So therefore, it's not enough that on the side of the Buddha, there is this compassion. But on our side also, we should have that receptivity. So two must come together. So once you take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, you will not be easily harmed by human beings and non-human beings. Now here one might say, I've been taking refuge, but I have been harmed there, here, things like that. As I said, taking refuge is not just repeating it by mouth. It's wholeheartedly taking refuge. When you wholeheartedly take refuge in something, at least in Tibetan society, there were many, many cases of people who took refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, even during war. And even that their body was, hit repeatedly by bullets of the gun. The bullet never went into their body. I'm not making it up. We have many, many examples of such people who are still alive, written books on it, right? Who take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha and put on this protective thread, which many of you got, then the bullet doesn't go inside. If you have not only the protective thread, but if you wholeheartedly take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We have cases of people who have this protective thread and goes to the hospital to take vaccination, but the vaccination never goes in their arms. Then finally they realize that it is because of the protective thread that they are wearing. So as soon as they take it out, then the vaccination easily goes into their arms. So there are many stories like that, you believe it or not. So your trust, your belief can make miracles. And then the so-called harms from human beings and non-human beings. As I mentioned earlier, it's not the case that there are many evildoers, non-human beings or human beings whose whole intention and job is to harm you. It's not really, generally speaking, it's not like that, right? But it's because of your past life's karma. It's because this life's mental attitude, lifestyle, that you are harmed, and because you make yourself vulnerable already, because of you have so many negative emotions. When you have many of these negative emotions, then you become a fertile ground for these evil spirits to harm you, right? I recall many stories related to His Holiness Dalai Lama. Right below, little distance from the place where I am right now, the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives, there is a place where they make some Tibetan kind of crafts and metals and things like that. So that small school, they had a lot of problem from some evil ghosts or things, spirits and things like that. So then they invited His Holiness Dalai Lama to that place. So His Holiness went there. And then after that, they said, since His Holiness visit, there was no other kind of evil spirit harming them. So what did His Holiness do? His Holiness later said that I had no magic power to send away or kick away these evil spirits. All I did was meditated on compassion. All I did was meditate on compassion, and during which I thought, whether you are a human being, non-human being, whatever kind of evil spirits you are, if you harm others, it is bad for you. You will have negative consequences. So we should all live harmoniously. He did that sort of meditation related to compassion, and that helped. Not only here, I have many stories like that with His Holiness Dalai Lama, right? So in our case also, much of the problems, including the arisal of negative emotions, are due to our misconceptions, our discursive thoughts. When you have these misconceptions and discursive thoughts within yourself, then even when there is no enemy, you see enemy. Even when there is no evil spirit, you see evil spirit. You see? Right? So once you transform and train your mind, it's really like having transformed everything. So that's the meaning. Okay? And then also, another benefit is for all lives, you will not be separated from Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So there are many, many benefits. Okay, now let us read the text. The first verse. It's primarily, we can make a differentiation between the process of taking refuge by the Mahayanas and those who follow the lower path. In the case of people who follow the lower path, they take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha just to achieve liberation for themselves. In the Mahayana case, you take refuge to help all sentient beings. So therefore, 4 special characteristics have been discussed in terms of the process of taking refuge, the Mahayana process of taking refuge. All engaging, that means it engages to all sentient beings and so forth. This will be explained later on in detail. Then in terms of your acceptance and promise, there is a difference. Then in terms of your realization, there is a difference, right? So, so in terms of object, the object is to help all sentient beings. In terms of its entity, you take refuge in the resultant objects of refuge. And then in terms of realization, the result is that you realize selflessness. And then the 4th is overpowering. That means in terms of its function, this process of Mahayana process of taking refuge overwhelms the worldly way of taking refuge, and also the process of taking refuge by the Sarvakas and Patika Buddhas. So all engaging, acceptance, realization, and overpowering with these features of 4 ways of classification of aspects of meaning, it becomes a supreme yana, the Mahayana. And hence, those who truly go for refuge is said to be supreme among all those that have gone for refuge. So that is the best process of taking refuge. This will be explained in detail in the subsequent verses. What's number 2nd? Now, the second verse is saying, one might ask a question by saying, yes, it may be a supreme process of taking refuge, but it's not easy, it's very difficult. True, as I said earlier, it's not easy to say I take refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, but genuinely taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, especially the Mahayana process of taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is not easy. There is a saying in Tibet that one senior Lama is called it the Sanghas in a big assembly, and he said that even among the senior most monks sitting in the first line, in the front line, and whose head is white with white hairs, such elderly monks, even among them I see there who do not take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. so they may have remained monks for so long and may have studied for so long, but still the basic thing, taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, is not there. Because wholeheartedly taking refuge is not easy. Very difficult. Right? So therefore this question arises. Because it's so difficult, I cannot take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So this is answered by saying that even though it is difficult, but you should take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, because you want to achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. It's difficult because since first it is difficult to ascertain this means to develop a conviction saying that I'll take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. That itself, that development of that conviction, it is first of all very difficult, number one. And then secondly, in terms of its training and precept, that is to practice the 6 or 10 perfections for thousands of eons, is of course difficult, because it is difficult to practice it for thousands of years. The 6 perfections or 10 perfections and so forth. You have to practice it for thousands of years, meaning that you have to practice for a long time to become perfect. Right? But even though it is difficult, you must engage. It is difficult, but you must do it, because if it is achieved, it is of great meaning in benefiting sentient beings. Hence, taking refuge in the Mahayana is of supreme meaning, supreme purpose. Okay. What's number 3? Is now going to explain the 4, features of the Mahayana process of taking refuge, which we read in the first verse. Now, in the case of all engaging in many ways. One is all engaging means engaging towards all sentient beings without any discrimination, because it is the job of a bodhisattva to make a promise to liberate all suffering sentient beings. So its object is all suffering sentient beings. One who has entered in liberating all sentient beings, first line. Then second, who possesses the skill in all engaging jnana. That means he is skilled in engaging in all the 3 jnanas, not just Mahayana, skilled in engaging in all the 3 jnanas, who possesses the skill in all engaging jnana. And the third is all engaging in terms of development of the primordial wisdom, because he is skilled in realizing both the 2 selflessnesses, and all engaging primordial wisdom. Primordial wisdom means primordial wisdom that realizes both the selflessnesses, selflessness of person, selflessness of phenomena. And the fourth is all engaging in terms of transcendence of suffering, or nirvana. Now, in the practice of the Mahayana process of taking refuge, transcendence of suffering or nirvana is not just solitary nirvana as I discussed earlier, but what we call as non-abiding nirvana. Because in the Mahayana process of taking refuge, the aim is to become completely enlightened, to become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. And that completely enlightened state or Buddhahood is a state where you don't abide both in samsara and also in nirvana. That's why it is called non-abiding nirvana. Ordinarily, either we remain in samsara, ordinary people like us, we remain in samsara. There's one extreme. Then those who aspire to achieve liberation just for themselves, they are also falling in one extreme. That is, they are satisfied only with their personal liberation and don't achieve enlightenment for all sentient beings. So therefore, in the process, Mahayana process of taking refuge, your aim is to achieve that non-abiding nirvana, which means you don't get stuck in samsara and also don't get stuck in the solitary peace or liberation just for oneself. Right? And this is a state where the samsara and the solitary peace and nirvana are seen as of equal test. And because of this is because of the proper development of both wisdom and compassion. Because of your proper development of compassion, you don't remain in solitary peace just for yourself. And because of your proper development of wisdom, you don't get stuck in the samsara. So therefore, again, this basically emphasizes the importance of harmonious development of wisdom and compassion. Okay. Okay. So that's the meaning of all engaging. Then in terms of its promise or acceptance, this is explained in two ways. The actual explanation and the explanation by examples. In terms of the actual explanation, it has again some great features. The first feature is the feature of special prayer. In terms of the feature of the prayer, so I'm reading verse 3 now. One who has entered in liberating all sentient beings. So that means in terms of prayer, the bodhisattvas are one who has known the qualities of the Buddha. Wait. So verse 4, we finish reading verse number 3. One who has entered in liberating all sentient beings, who possesses the skill in all engaging jnana and all engaging primordial wisdom, one who is of equal test of samsara and peace, yes, in the transcendence of suffering, that means liberation. Such intelligent person should be understood here as all engaging. Now verse number 4. The second feature, explains second feature, acceptance of promise. Now in terms of the actual explanation, The bodhisattvas have performed certain prayers. One who with many joys, that means bodhisattvas here are those who has known the qualities of the Buddha, and therefore their mind is filled with many joys. One who with many joys aspire, make effort to achieve that supreme enlightenment. That's one feature. The second feature is the feature of practice. One who employs right hardship without sadness. So in terms of the practice, the unique feature of practice is that they don't get saddened or discouraged when engaged in practice. This is also important. In our case, first few days we make a lot of effort, then we might get discouraged, right? So one who employs right hardship, correct effort, without sadness basically means without discouragement. And then as a result, the fruit that they achieve, what they achieve is one who thoroughly gets enlightened and becomes equal to all enlightened ones. So that means you also join the other crowds of the enlightened Buddhas. And when you become completely enlightened, you are equal to all other Buddhas in terms of your abandonment, in terms of your realization. So you have these three features. So such intelligent person should be understood as of supreme acceptance. One who had met supreme acceptance or supreme promise, fulfillment of supreme promise. Now this is again explained with some examples. First, it's explained with the example of a prince. One who is born well as the supreme son of the fully enlightened one and has mind, wisdom, collection, and compassion. So that means, first, just like a prince, in terms of its rebirth. For example, in the case of a prince, the prince has to be born based on the seed that is implanted by the universal monarch in the womb of a queen, and then that womb should be intact, which is not, which should be healthy and not disturbed by disorders of wind, bile, and so forth. And then after the birth, there should be caretakers like foster parents and things like that. So once these four qualities are fulfilled, and then there will be a fully qualified prince of that king. So similarly, first you need this mind. One who is born well as the supreme son of the fully enlightened one, like the universal, like the prince, should also have the mind, that's the mind of bodhicitta, and the wisdom, which realizes the emptiness of all phenomena. Okay? And then he should have also collection. Collection means collection of merit and wisdom, which is not alloyed by stinginess and so forth. And compassion. That means one should have this compassion towards all sentient beings, which distinguishes it from the lower vehicles, which is really like the foster mother. So when you have these four incomparable causes, which is not there in the Sarvakas and Patika Buddhas, and from there, then on the first ground, out of the 10 spiritual ground, on the first ground, and then you are born as the supreme spiritual son of the Buddha. Such intelligent person should be understood as of supreme promise or acceptance. Okay. The next verse, verse number 6, describes the unique body of, first it takes the example of the body of that prince who is born healthy. Because in the case of that prince who is born healthy, has special features in his body, and also has the power to conquer small minor provinces around, and also can enjoy the luxury of the kingdom, and also has the wisdom and the knowledge of how to run the nation, run the country. So likewise, when you reach the eighth bhumi, eighth spiritual ground, the bodhisattva on the eighth spiritual ground, its body is adorned by multifarious signs. Okay. In other words, this bodhisattva's body has also very special signs, like a universal monarch. And has actualized the power to measure all sentient beings. That's his power. He has the power to measure the mind of all sentient beings. And in terms of its well-being, has found the limitless peace of great bliss of the Buddha. Because of having eliminated one of the two obscurations, it enjoys great bliss, leading to the state of Buddhahood. And that bliss is almost infinite and continuous. Has found the limitless peace of great bliss of the Buddha. Knows how to arrange the great means to protect all sentient beings. That means he has also found the complete peace, which is a state of being free from suffering, and has the skillful means to protect all sentient beings from their suffering. So therefore, he is able to display or arrange, just like displaying many varieties of food on the table that's ready for the guests to eat. So similarly, through his many skillful ways, he's able to display that multifarious skillful means to help sentient beings with various dispositions, mental dispositions. Verse number 8 is talking about the continuity of its lineage. The power of great rays of light will be conferred by all the Buddhas that correctly possess all the control over Dharma. There will be proper cognizance of display of mandala of the Buddha retinues, and will endeavor to enact precepts to destroy and benefit. So that basically means, just as the prince, when it grows up, is empowered to look after the kingdom, and certain other trainings are given, likewise, the bodhisattvas on the 10th spiritual ground actualizes a primordial wisdom, which is called a primordial wisdom cognizant of all other meditative civilizations. He's empowered with that kind of empowered, not necessarily empowered by the Buddha from outside, but one's own having achieved such primordial wisdom, one gets empowered. And as soon as one actualizes such a state, then it explains in detail, because it says the empowerment of great rays of light. It's a very complicated explanation, but basically means when you reach that state, then you can emanate rays of light from your eyes, from your, from various parts of the body, from your legs, from your hands, from every parts of your body, and imminent, send those rays of light towards all sentient beings in different categories to alleviate their suffering. So that is the meaning. Okay. The empowerment of great rays of light will be conferred by all the Buddhas. So it also means that when you are empowered, when you reach the 10th ground, just as Maitreya was empowered by the Buddha to be his regent. So similarly, you will be also appointed as a regent, and you will therefore be able to engage in all objects of knowledge without hindrance, without obstruction. To correctly possess all the control over Dharma. That means you are master of all the teachings. And there will be proper cognizance of display of mandala of the Buddha readiness. That means even when you join the mandala of the Buddhas, enlightened beings, there also you will have the confidence and capacity to ask questions, get answers, and engage in active discussion, right? And will endeavor to enact precepts to destroy and to benefit. That means then you will make the effort. You have the power, and you make the effort to revert those who observe the precepts. Enact precepts means he will make new precepts to destroy those who are following the wrong path, who are violating the precepts. He will punish them, kind of. And then those who are practicing faithfully, he will try to help them, empower them, benefit them. That is the meaning. Okay. So I think we need to stop here.
Okay, Geshe-la, so shall we just answer some questions, right?
Yes. I have to.
Okay, so we start with a question from Nika, and she asks about taking refuge. What do you imagine in your mind and feel in your heart when you take refuge in three jewels? Or so I can easily imagine Buddha, Shakyamuni, or Amitabha, but how do I address Dharma? What do I need to imagine, and what do I need to feel? And what about Sangha? If I'm not a nun or a monk, but I have people who are my friends in my Buddhist studies and practices, they are from different communities, how can I collect them in my mind?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, here, when we say Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, we are not talking about ordinary friends. Okay? It's good that you recall your friends, good friends, but not here when you take refuge. When you take refuge, then as you rightly mentioned, you need to remember the completely enlightened. Buddha means one who has removed all the negative qualities, who are without suffering, and who possesses all the positive qualities, and who knows everything, right? So basically one without fault, one with all the qualities. So visualize such a Buddha. And then we take refuge to Dharma, we need to think about a state of being free from all negative emotions, especially attachment. A supreme state of being free from negative emotions, especially attachment. So remember that and aspire to achieve that state. That is taking refuge to Dharma. And then Sangha should be visualized as the supreme of all the communities. There are many communities on ordinary level, right? But they are called the supreme community because, as I mentioned, that Sangha means one who has achieved the path of seeing. I do not know that has to be a monk. I don't think so. Even a layperson, even a layperson can achieve that state of having directly seen emptiness, who has seen path of seeing, right? So it can be both a layperson and also, Sangha. But the criteria, main criteria is somebody who has achieved the path of seeing. third path out of the 5 paths. One who has achieved the path of seeing can be visualized as the Sangha. Okay.
Thank you, Geshe-la. And the next question is from Dinara. She asks, how can I develop and strengthen the faith? For example, sometimes in difficult situations, I try to read mantras or make offerings and other kind of practices that should help, but it doesn't help always. And at such moments, I just feel that my faith begins to become less. So, but when I say to myself that probably this is the reason of my bad karma, and I have many doubts, and so maybe the reason why my faith becomes less strong is just my doubts.
Yeah. So faith, as I mentioned, faith should be not blind faith. Faith based on reason, knowledge. Now, the genuine faith based on reason and knowledge will not come, in a single meditation or in a short practice. It takes time. So that's why you are having that problem, you see. So at the end of the day, it's not just a recitation of mantra or blindly taking refuge in something else. Not that one. But understanding, realization is important. For example, if you are having fear, you should question to what object I'm having this fear. Analyze the nature of that source of that fear. Then many a times when you really look to find out the source of that fear, then you don't find anybody to pinpoint, anything to pinpoint. Then the fear goes down, right? And then many a times the fear comes because of being unrealistic. For example, fear of death. Okay. Now, fear of death, in Buddhism also we talk about developing fear of death, but that is not the ordinary way of developing fear with the death. Ordinarily, when we develop fear of death, it means we fear because you are thinking, oh, my body will go out, my body will vanish. You have this attachment to the body, basically. And when you die, this body will, stop functioning. So you are having fear. That's not the right fear, right? Because even if your body doesn't continue, your mind continues. So it's really like changing clothes, as we say. So there's no reason to fear. And I have myself given the example, like you don't develop fear when you go to bed tonight. When you sleep, it's almost like being dead, but you don't develop fear. So it's only a question of getting habituated with certain practices. So you really need to scrutinize and find out what is the source of your fear. So many times you will find this unnecessary. And then the crucial point is how much benefit you are getting by developing this fear. Right? So generally speaking, if it is an unreasonable fear, the other day I explained, if there is a fear from being beaten by a mad dog, then of course it's right fear. It's good to run away. Right? But you develop a fear that in your room there is another evil spirit standing there, it's just your mental creation, You don't actually see. If some other people come, they don't see, So it's your mental creation. So you need to, analyze what is creating this fear, or what is it that is making you lose this faith. What other options are better options are there? If there is a better option, go for that. Okay. But there's no option in life unless you have some faith in something. There's not much then reason for living, you see. We live because of hope, because of faith in something. It may be temporary, it may be long term, you see. Hope and faith must be realistic. Okay.
Geshe-la, I just wanted to clarify maybe for myself as well. Dinara mentioned that when she feels that her faith become to shatter, right, to waver, it's probably the result of her karma. And I'm wondering how useful and helpful it is to think that when you fail in your practice or you're not so much successful in your practice, to think, oh, this is probably the result of my karma. Is it helpful and useful?
It is helpful if you think it in a optimistic way. Not helpful if you see it in a pessimistic way. It is my karma, so there's nothing I can do, I give up. If you think like that, then it's not helpful, of course, very harmful. But if you think, yes, I'm having problem because of my karma, but this doesn't mean I can't change, I can't improve. So in fact, this is an occasion to continuously develop that faith and purify the karma, you see. So that way, that hindrance itself becomes a facilitating factor for strengthening your faith. Okay.
Thank you very much, Geshe-la. Dear friends, I just would like to remind you that you can send your questions to the chat, or for our English-speaking participants, you can raise your hand in the reactions. So please, you're welcome to ask questions, because I think that we still have some time, Geshe-la, right?
Mm.
Or otherwise, I understand that probably now it's not the best time, for questions for someone for some reason. So if so, maybe Geshe-la, we could just pause here with a short prayer and dedication.
Okay. Yeah. And dedication, out of the 7-limb practice, dedication is one very, very important practice. Dedication is like depositing your money in the bank. Many countries, in many countries, even if you deposit your money in the bank, you may not get much interest, but at least, hopefully, these days things are changing, but hopefully there is some security in ordinary times, not during the conflict times. So hopefully, so therefore, when you dedicate it, then it is said that your good deeds will not be wasted, it will not be lost. So whenever you do something, even 10 minutes meditation, even 5 minutes having helped others, immediately after that you develop that, delight and joy, and then say, may this become a cause to become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. So it's very, very important to do this dedication. Now, especially these days, unfortunately, the conflict that is happening between, happening basically in Ukraine, so many lives are lost, so many miseries, problems are there. So therefore, there's not much we can do, but we can clearly see the destructiveness of negative emotions, sufferings that is created for ordinary people, whatever be the reason, whatever be the decision made by people who have the power, right? So through this, we should at least make some promise. One is, you are clearly able to see now how destructive these weapons of mass destructions are, that if there is a possibility for all of us, or whenever there's a possibility, we should think about disarmament, globally destroying all these powerful destructive weapons. And once we are able to dismantle all these destructive weapons, then even if there is a fight, then the destruction will be limited. Now, with this very powerful collection of powerful weapons, especially nuclear weapons, I mean, the destruction is unimaginable, unthinkable. On the one hand, so that's why in Buddhism we are repeatedly talking about transforming your mental intelligence towards positive side, not towards negative side. On the negative side, we are so good in making of all these destructive weapons. We have so much capacity in destroying so many people within a relatively short time. On the positive side, we are not able to handle the pandemic. When it comes to doing something good, we fail miserably, unfortunately. Basic health infrastructures are not there in many so-called, even in so-called developed countries. We have seen this. I'm not exaggerating it. So therefore, even at our ordinary individual level, it is important, not to get discouraged. We may not be able to help everybody, but we can definitely help some. Anytime, not necessarily during wartime, anytime. There's so many poor people, so many people who need help. We can help them, right? And during such conflicts, when so much destruction is done by people who have the power to destroy, many people think, oh, what is the use of doing good? That's wrong. Your life cannot be judged by what has happened, what is happening during the wartime, right? We are not talking about how to lead a life during wartime. We are talking about how to lead a good, happy life during wartime, without wartime, this life in Buddhism, many lives to come. So it's a common sense to understand that in our life, we need happiness, harmony, you see, peace. That's important. So I think it's very, very important not to get discouraged by such ugly happenings. And then if you are a sincere Buddhist practitioner, then you know this is more or less expected in samsara. When we have such strong, unruly, wild, negative emotions rampant within us, ready to flare out with slight provocation, and then this, with such a person with such negative emotions, given this powerful destructive weapons. I mean, His Holiness mentioned this earlier, what has happened in America when that Twin Tower was destroyed. His Holiness said that when this untrained mind, in the hand of an untrained mind, unruly person, in the hand of unruly person, mischievous person, when such a sophisticated destructive weapon is given, how much scale of destruction can be brought out is clear example. We have seen there, and now we are seeing today also. Whereas in Buddhism, as I repeatedly mentioned, in Buddhism we say we don't have to kill people, they will die. Everywhere, so many people having problem. As if this is not enough. we are destroying them, unfortunately. Right? So ordinary people, we don't have the capacity to decide everything, but on our own limited capacity, we should develop this compassion and try as much as possible to help others. Then you have nothing to regret. Whatever happens in the world, even when you die, you don't have to regret. That is our preparation, right? And then death, of course, will come anytime, not necessarily by bombing. It may be, car accident. It may be due to taking wrong food. It may be going to the wrong place. I mean, right from the birth, we have been running towards death. I think it's seventh Dalai Lama who wrote a beautiful prayer where he says, if I try to roughly translate it, he says, right from the birth, you do not have the capacity to hold even for a moment. And you are running towards the Lord of the death with full speed. Even though you call yourself being alive, but you are on the national highway to death. Alas, alas, this sad state of the criminal led to the place of execution. So roughly translating, this is something like this. So this is our state. So therefore, it is important in all times to, keep peace in your mind. And the purpose of human life is to help others as much as possible, wherever it is happening, and at least pray, feel for them, right? So therefore, during this occasion, we should, whatever merit we have accumulated by studying this great text, let us dedicate the fruit of this practice to benefit all suffering sentient beings, especially pray and that this war very soon come to an end, and human beings gradually learn to live in harmony. Okay. Thank you.